Hi, everybody, and welcome into an instant reaction on a Sunday night. So listen, we could break down the Packers and the Eagles. The Eagles' O-line completely dominated the football game. There was a reason they were about a touchdown favorite. And Aaron Rodgers is banged up. I suggested a couple of weeks ago it's time to shut him down. They're now 4-8. They're a couple of games behind other teams like the Giants or the Seahawks. Seahawks still have to play the Rams twice. So Green Bay's playoff hopes are done, completely done. And I think the story of the game, at least from a Green Bay perspective, was Jordan Love. So Jordan Love is the quarterback they moved up to draft in the first round a couple of years ago. Aaron Rodgers had declined for a couple of years, slightly, marginal decline, erosion. And so they drafted Jordan Love, and of course Aaron Rodgers inspired, gets Matt LaFleur, and has a couple of MVP seasons. So, Jordan Love, I remember making calls on Jordan Love with a couple executives, and they told me that the two criticisms were he was loose. He needed to be cleaned up. He was a little loose with his mechanics. And the second thing, he was immature. He just wasn't ready to be a franchise quarterback. He was like 21-year-old kid, right? So now he's 24. His birthday's in early November. So next year, he would be 25 in the middle of a season. We all watched him tonight. I don't have any grand idea of what he'll be in the NFL, but he moves pretty well. Slender kid, but he snaps the ball off, moves well. I thought he was significantly more confident and comfortable than he was a year ago when he started against the Chiefs. So the learning curve, it's pretty intense when you go from college to the NFL, but extra time, especially when you go from Utah State to the NFL. It's different Bama. It's different, Oklahoma, Texas, Power 5 schools. But there's something there. And some guys just need the maturity. And, that was the knock on him. He just was an immature kid, not ready to be a franchise quarterback, but he's going to be mid-25s next year. And, they would take a salary cap hit if they moved off Aaron Rodgers. But I do feel like the organization just, they drafted him for a reason. They wanted to see him play. I'd shut it down for Aaron this year. He's banged up. You could sell it to Aaron. We don't want you to get hurt. If Jordan Love comes in and loses, you get a better draft pick. If he wins, then you have other conversations. But there's something there. There's something. Nobody's saying he's Mahomes, but he's a loose athlete. He moves well, snaps it off, and I thought he was really comfortable looking on the road in Philadelphia, much more so than he was against the Chiefs. So I'd shut it down for Aaron, let him play the rest of the season. At 4-8, playoffs are done. And that was an interesting development late in that game. So a couple of other games I want to talk about. So let's talk Jets-Bears. So Mike White got the start over Zach Wilson. Mike White threw for 315 yards, 22 of 28 for 3 touchdowns, and they demolished the Bears. So we know this to be true. He was a 5th-round pick, bounced around a couple of college programs. Not a guy that you think at this point you would build around. But he is a better quarterback, Mike White is today, than Zach Wilson. It's not terribly close. First of all, Mike is not a great athlete, but he's a very accurate distributor of the football. He completes about 67, 68% of his throws so far in the NFL. Zach Wilson's in mid-50s. Zach Wilson's in that Trey Lance situation where nobody's quite sure if he can get to 60, 62% completion percentage. Zach just doesn't see the field particularly well. Trey Lance for the Niners has a kind of a mechanical issue. You got to get into the 61, 62% to be an NFL quarterback. Mike White completes closer to 70%. His career passer rating nudges up against 90. Zach Wilson's is low 70s. So Mike White gives the Jets currently a much better chance to win football games. Play him the rest of the season. You say, well, what would you do with Zach Wilson? Well, you've never paid him the big money. He could be on somebody else's roster. But to this point, 2 years in, there is nothing I have seen with Zach Wilson that would lead me to believe he's a franchise quarterback. He's not accurate. He's not improving. He doesn't see the field. He's been injured twice. He lost a locker room. I mean, you got to check one box. You got to give me a leadership maturity thing or an accurate thing or he's getting better. Zach Wilson's not checking any of those boxes. So Mike White, I mean, we're seeing Taylor Heineke now peel off wins. There is something to be said about a distributor of the football who the locker room believes in, who moves the sticks, and in the case of Taylor Heineke and Mike White, if you have a good defense behind you and a defensive head coach, you can stay in games, make a play or two late. Jets roster is good enough to battle until the last week of the year for the playoffs. Buffalo and Miami are better teams. You don't know. You don't know right now. You could have 3 playoff teams from one division. We thought the AFC West was going to be loaded, but doubtful the Raiders or the Broncos make the playoffs. Chargers will be up against it week 17. But, it's you can't sit and worry about Zach Wilson. He hasn't held up his end of the bargain. Okay? They gave him a good defense. They've drafted some running backs. They've given him targets. They've given him good coaching. Zach Wilson hasn't lived up to his end of the bargain. Can't worry about it. Mike White, better quarterback right now, better distributor right now, more of an adult right now. I want to talk about the Raiders and the Seahawks. For most of my life, almost all of it, the Raiders have been impossible to root for. It's hard for me, I've said this before, it's really hard for me to root for dysfunction. So I grew up as a kid with some dysfunction in my house. And so I remember years ago there was a show that came out called Intervention. I couldn't watch it. I watched like 5 minutes of the first episode. I'm like, there's too much chaos for me. I can't watch it. So the Raiders have just been a chaotic tire fire. Not interesting. People say, Colin, you like this team or that team. I like teams that are well run. I like the Golden State Warriors. I like the Dodgers. Alabama football with Nick Saban, the Patriots with Belichick and Brady. I like structure. I like organizational competence. Most of my last 15, 20 years, the Raiders haven't had any. So when Josh McDaniels started the year off poorly, everybody was like, fire Josh McDaniels. And I said, time out. It takes longer to rebuild a poorly owned, poorly run business. And they were losing close. And I find this to be a very likable Raiders team. They play with passion. They play with a lot of heart. And I was talking to Sean Payton, former Saints coach and now works at Fox Sports. I was talking to him off the air a couple of weeks ago, and he wouldn't mind me sharing this. I said, what do you make of the Raiders situation? He said, he goes, I don't know what they're going to do. He goes, but that's an interesting roster. He said they got the receiver, star receiver, they got a slot receiver, they got a tight end, they have a star back, they have a left tackle, they have a pass rusher. He said, there's a lot of interesting things there for either Josh McDaniels or, whatever coach is out there. I think the Raiders have some options. I would stay with Derek Carr, but if you move off him, you're going to have some nice draft picks. Max Crosby, how big was he in key spots? If you look at this league right now, you got to be really good at about 5 spots. Well, they got the left tackle, they got the star receiver, they got the back, they have a good enough quarterback, they have an edge rusher, they got to clean up the back end of their defense. But Josh Jacobs had 33 carries. Derek Carr was 25 of 36. Seattle's a quality club. They went on the road. They won in overtime on the road. I find the Raiders infinitely likable, and I haven't much for the last 2 decades. Derek Carr lifted them almost single-handedly into the playoffs last year. I don't think they feel like a playoff team this year, but that was fun to watch. Even though I'm from the Pacific Northwest, I found myself kind of rooting for the Raiders. Speaking of Sean Payton, Arizona played the Chargers. And for anybody that criticizes Justin Herbert, it was his fourth quarter comeback win of the season. It feels like the only way the Chargers can win is come from behind because their defense never shows up. Despite the fact Mike Williams wasn't available, Their Pro Bowl left tackle's been out since early in the season. Major cluster injuries on the O-line, wide receiver. We're not sure if we like their coach. Justin Herbert came out. He now has 16 red zone touchdowns, which I believe leads the NFL. But it's interesting, as Arizona lost, a lot of Sean Payton rumors circulated on the internet. And folks, Sean Payton's going to have his pick of jobs. If he just had Arizona and the Chargers as options, who would you take? Herbert or Kyler? One's bigger, more coachable, has a better arm, and can also move. I have defended Kyler Murray almost since day one. But after the game, he called out his coach again, Cliff Kingsbury, saying schematically we were dropped an F-bomb. What are we doing here? I mean, Kyler, what are we doing here? So for the Arizona fans, if you think you're going to get an elite offensive coach, a coach with options, Kyler Murray's a time bomb. I mean, they can move off Cliff Kingsbury. But one of the downsides as a player, especially a player at a key position, airing your grievances publicly, the whole world can hear it. If I was an offensive coach, I would be completely turned off by what's happening in Arizona. You got the owner doesn't like the quarterback doesn't like his coach. They're on the hard knocks thing, so you can sense the tension. Arizona's in a really rough spot, and because everybody's airing their grievances publicly, it's just toxic. What elite coach wants to join that kind of toxicity? The Chargers may be struggling, but the coach loves Herbert. The owner loves Herbert. Herbert loves everybody. That'd be an easy one to take over. I mean, you're just walking into an organization that appears to be, kind of underachieving. It's like, if you're having problems in professional sports, mostly keep them to yourself. I mean, Arizona may have a help wanted sign here in about 2 months. There's going to be a lot of coaches that are just not even remotely interested. I mean, it's hard enough to rebuild a roster, to build a staff, to build a culture. To me, Arizona is just stay away. Stay away if you're a coach. That's what it feels like to me. If you're like most men, you want to be confident and you want to look good. But finding accessories that are both high quality and stylish, it can be a challenge. That's where our friends at Vincero come in. Accessories, watches, sunglasses, jewelry. Their top tier designs are sleek and exude class. So if you're looking to stand out from the rest, it's simple. Vincero is the way to go. At Vincero Collective, their mission is simple. Build premium products that can be worn daily, yet are built to last. They design all their products in-house, in small batches, without sacrificing on style. Not only does Vincero make fantastic watches, they also offer a line of iconic sunglasses. All of their sunglasses are polarized and scratch resistant, and all the glasses are made with high quality Italian acetate and steel hinges. Vincero is the absolute perfect gift for yourself or somebody you love. Whether you're shopping for a watch, sunglasses, jewelry, you'll find that special something with Vincero Collective. Right now, it's Vincero's biggest sale of the year. Limited time offer up to 30% off. Site-wide sale, no code needed, discount auto applied. It is Vincero's biggest sale of the year. Accessorize your life with style at Vincero. I do want to talk a little college football here. So at this point, your Heisman vote should be rescinded or removed if you don't vote for Caleb Williams of USC. I am not being a homer. He is singularly the best player in college football. The Heisman tends to be, years ago I had a vote, it tends to be incredibly regionalized, which is a huge turnoff for me. So right now the coaches poll has Georgia 1, Michigan 2, TCU 3, and USC 4. I guess I'll talk specifically about USC. If, let's say you worked at a company and the company had really good management, it would make a lot of sense that the longer the management stayed at the company, the more it would grow and the more it would improve. The longer good people run a company, the better the company. And the inverse is true. I think what's remarkable, having watched almost every snap for USC this year, is that every unit for the Trojans has gotten better over the last 3 months. The quality of coaching and culture is really remarkable. And people can say, well, they went and got Caleb Williams. Remember, of the 20 or so transfers that came in the transfer portal, Caleb was great. Jordan Addison was great. Linebacker Eric Gentry is very, very good. But most players who enter the transfer portal are not NFL players. They are leaving a situation that is not working for them. Maybe they've been injured and lost a starting role. Maybe they don't get along with a coach. But Caleb Williams is a very rare player in the transfer portal. He was a star following his star head coach. But USC is largely made up of underachieving players when Riley entered it, and guys who were solid players at other programs that transferred. That shouldn't equal 11-1. That's not an 11-1 roster. So a lot of this is just coaching and culture. But at this point, if you're watching college football, and this is not a shot at anybody, and if you don't think Caleb is the Heisman winner, people can say, well, I read some things on the internet and a couple of articles today. Well, everybody knew USC was going to be good. Well, that's not true. They were largely viewed as a 9-3 team. They were, before the season, an underdog to Utah and Notre Dame and a coin flip against UCLA. And most people believed Fresno State and Oregon State, they'd win, but they'd be close. And in both cases, they got away with one in Corvallis. I'll leave it at that. But if you ever question what coaching means to young employees, what they're doing at USC should not be this good, this quick. And I've watched almost every snap. Virtually every unit has gotten better over 3 months, and that is just a credit to the position coaches, the coordinators, and most of all, Lincoln Riley. So an instant reaction on a Sunday night, we'll see on Fox Sports 1. Hopefully you'll be listening on Premier Radio, iHeartRadio tomorrow. We'll see you.